Hello, everyone. Welcome to Live with the Doctors on Thursdays. Nice to be here. If you guys are here, please say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. We're happy to have people joining us. I know we took a little break for the past month while people were traveling and things were happening, but we're back. So these will be live on Thursdays, the first and third Thursday. Ideally at 12:30 Mountain Time, 2:30 Eastern, but there may be a little variability depending on guests that are coming. So we will let you guys know in newsletters. So we appreciate you guys being here. Today, we have a very special talk. We have an important topic. It's something that comes up quite a bit. People have a lot of questions. There's a lot of different people saying different things that we hear about. And this is just such an important topic. So we have some experts here to share with us. So I want to introduce Dr. Carrie O'Connor.
Hello.
And Dr. Kim Scheuer.
Hey, hey.
And let's see who we have joining us. We have Liam. Hello. We have Beth. Hi, Beth from St. George. Yay. Love it. Hi, Jai. Hi, Dr. Chris. Oh, Joanne. Hi. Nice to see you. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for joining us. We'll give it just a minute more, and then we're going to jump in because you guys have a lot of really good information. So we want to share that. And we'll be doing another one in 2 weeks, the next one. And we're going to be talking about the benefits of hiring or working with a lifestyle medicine doctor, because there are a lot of things that maybe you can't get from another doctor, or it's a new paradigm in healthcare. And it's pretty special, the relationship and the benefits that you can get. And so we're going to talk a little bit more in detail why we think it's important and why we hope you guys will find it important also. So hi, Dulcina. Did I say that right? From Illinois. Welcome. Nice to have you guys. So, well, without further ado, while people are joining, let's go ahead and get started, because we're going to try to keep this to 35 minutes, and we want to have time for them to give our awesome talk. So hi, Leslie from Minneapolis. Wonderful. Are you guys ready?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Do this. I'm going to add your talk, and let me know as you want me to slide them along.
All right, Dr. Scheuer, take it away.
All right. So we are starting off with the question we get asked all the time. Where do you get your protein? Hey, Kim. Hi, Rich. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I can't find it yet. Hold on.
That's okay.
Okay, got it. I'm ready.
I didn't introduce us. I'm Dr. Kim Scheuer. We have Dr. Carrie O'Connor and obviously Dr. Chris Miller. And we're going to talk about, where do we get your protein? Do these plants, we have here that plants don't have enough protein, or they don't have all the essential amino acids? We're going to talk about that. Next slide. We'll talk.
All right, so we're going to start with, what is a protein? So protein is a molecule made up of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. And you can see the image on the lower left that has the little R attached to it. That's an actual single molecule, and you can see the 4 components there. The R is a side chain where other amino acids, other molecules will connect to make a peptide, which then connect to make a protein. So you can see this long string of beads. That's a protein. When we digest it, it gets broken apart into the amino acids. Next slide. And the amino acids, when they're broken apart in our stomach, then depending upon our body's needs, will reform little peptides, which then form proteins. So you can think of it, this was an analogy Dr. Scheuer had, like the amino acids are like the letters of the alphabet, the peptides are the words in a sentence, and the protein is the entire sentence itself, with the letters, the words forming a complete sentence. So the proteins that get broken down into amino acids, they're absorbed in the small intestine. Then they're reassembled, again, depending upon our body's needs. But our body also makes things that we will sometimes take from the outside that we may not need, like creatine and collagen. There can be a place for those, but they're not necessarily reformed the way that we take them in, because they're broken apart into their component amino acids and then reformed based on what our body needs. If we take in, there is a place, in Dr. Scheuer will talk about that, taking in creatine in a form of a supplement. But if we take in too much, it can damage our kidneys, and it can also prevent our own endogenous or inside of our body production. Creatine, we actually make from the amino acid methionine, which is an essential one. We'll talk about this in a moment. Glycine and arginine, which are non-essential. And foods, whole plant foods that you can see here that you get creatine is like pumpkin, watermelon, and sesame seeds, spirulina, nuts, legumes, veggies, and greens. And next slide, please. So amino acids, there are 20. 9 of them are essential. It just means that we do not make them. So we need to get them from our diet. And here are some of the functions of those amino acids you can see on the slide. There's 3, isoleucine, leucine, and valine, that are branch chain amino acids. They help enhance our energy. Dr. Scheuer is going to talk about those in a future slide as well too. Next slide. And here are some foods where you can get your amino acids in plants. All plants contain all 9 essential amino acids. They're just in different proportions. One that's a real superfood for your amino acids is lentils. Lentils is very high in almost all of the 9 essential amino acids. You'll notice that there's a little asterisk by phenylalanine. All babies in America are tested for something called PKU, or phenylketonuria, which is a defect in the gene that codes for phenylalanine hydroxylase, which breaks down that phenylalanine. And you would know if you have it. You're tested at birth for it. It's very, 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 very rare, but you would have to avoid foods that are high in phenylalanine. But you don't need to worry about that if you everyone, again, is tested at birth. And if you weren't positive for that, again, it's very, very rare. You don't have any concerns about eating foods that have phenylalanine in them.
Sorry, that was my bad.
And then everyone talks about kale being a superfood. It is. And go to the next slide. So kale has all 9 essential amino acids, and it's highest in these 5 here. So isoleucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, and valine.
I hope everyone's memorizing all these different amino acids in the foods. So
there's a test at the end.
So we'll talk about the function of protein. And protein is used in our bodies for all kinds of things: structure, function, regulation of our tissues. There are at least 10,000 in our bodies to support life. Some of them contain minerals attached to them. Remember the R and things like that. Iron for bringing hemoglobin, which brings oxygen around your body. Selenium, that protects us from cancer. Some proteins are antibodies that protect us from viruses and bacteria, enzymes that catalyze chemical reactions, and some of them work as transporters. So protein's very, very important. Next slide. I'll give you some fun facts about protein. It comes from the Greek word proteus, which is primary or first ranked, so very, very important. It is essential to life. About 18 to 20% of our body is protein. But protein really only lasts in our body for about 2 days or less. So, it isn't there forever. It does help us feel full, increases satiety. So eating a little bit of protein does make us feel more full sometimes. Our bodies would swell without it. So if you think about people, real true protein deficiency, you'll get swelling in your belly, like kwashiorkor, which you'll see in the kids in third world countries that are starving, don't get enough calories, so they don't get enough protein. People really worry about sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss. And so they all want more and more protein, but it really is not the protein that you have to be concerned about for sarcopenia. It's movement and exercise, strength training. They actually did a study in the UK, a twin study, where they gave lots of protein to one twin and not as much to the other, and the exercise was the same. And the participants that got more protein had more sarcopenia. So it's really the movement that's important. You have to move your muscles to get them stronger. You do need some protein, but not as much as we think in this country. And really important, protein is a very poor fuel source. Our body's fuel, the primary source is carbohydrates, then fats. And protein is not a good fuel source because we don't store proteins to be used later. Next slide. And Dr. O'Connor will talk about that. So
how much protein do we need, right? Some things that, and I can see there's a couple of questions in the sidebar about this. So this is a good time to address this here. When you're wondering about how much protein do you need, first calculate how much you're actually getting, right? Put something like in Chronometer or in MyFitnessPal, some app that's going to track it, and figure out exactly how much protein you're getting. And we'll talk about the actual needs in a moment. And then ask yourself, why do I think I need more protein? And who are you comparing yourself to? Are you comparing yourself to someone in your family that has a similar activity level as you? Or are you comparing yourself to, an Ironman triathlete or an Ironwoman triathlete, right? Is it a realistic standard? And really finding out how much protein you need is essential, because too much protein can potentially be harmful to us. We've already answered the question. Protein is really not a great fuel source. We don't store it. And then the best way to build muscle with age is exercise, not necessarily adding more protein to our diet. And then how much protein can we actually digest at one time? We'll talk about that. And if we're focusing so much on protein, what are we actually missing? Next slide.
So how much protein do we need? It depends on your time of life. In babies in breast milk, they only get about 5% of their calories from protein. Fat is way more important in that first year. As we get older, we need more. In generally, we talk about 0.8 grams per kilogram per day for a typical adult. And for seniors, more. For athletes, some more. For lactating women, more. And also, there's another thing, that if you are eating a very high fiber plant-based diet, fiber affects digestibility. So you may need a tiny percent more, like about 10% more, due to large amount of fiber consumed. However, if you're eating a protein-rich plant-based diet that's based on tofu, it doesn't have a lot of fiber, you don't necessarily need more. Next slide. Okay. And I forgot to mention, let's go back to the other slide because I wasn't sure if it was on this slide. So where did they come from, get the 0.8 grams per kilogram per day? That's from the RDA, how much they figure out we need. They averaged out that most people need about 0.66 grams per kilogram per day. Then they went up 2 standard deviations so that they made sure that 97.5% of the country would have enough protein if they got 0.8 grams per kilogram per day. But that means even if you got the exact 0.8 grams per kilogram per day, you're probably getting more than you need, because 50% of those people don't need quite that much. So that's why I wanted to make sure we talked about that. But next slide. So math. Oh no, yuck. What is 0.8 grams per kilogram per day? So if you're a 165-year-old person, and this is based on ideal body weight, not like, for me, I'm short, and so 165 would not be my ideal body weight. So this is a 165 healthy person. You would divide that by 2.2 to get kilograms. That's about 75 kilograms of body weight. 75 times 0.8 grams per kilogram of protein is 60 grams of protein per day. Remember, we talked about if you are plant-based and high fiber, you want to add a little bit more, about 10%. So, 66 grams would be adequate, or generally pretty good amount of protein. They also talk about protein in terms of percent of calories. So what's the percent of calories on a whole food plant-based, on a diet that would be appropriate? And we use the whole food plant-based diet, so 66 grams, to see what the percent of calories it is. Protein has 4 calories per gram. If you eat 66 grams of protein, then 66 times 4 is 264 calories. If you consider a 165-pound person probably gets about a 2,500 calorie diet, that'd be reasonable. You do some math and you figure out that that would be 10% of calories from protein. And that's a pretty good amount for those. Again, we've done the 66 grams because we added a little bit more to account for fiber. But 10% to 15% of your calories from protein is actually a really good amount. So you can, if you see that you're getting on Chronometer 25 to 30% of your calories from protein, that may be too much, especially if it's animal protein. Next slide.
So some of the risks of excess protein. I did see a question about on the side panel about what time of day is best to eat protein. You have to keep in mind how much protein your body can digest at a time. So it's best to break it up over 3 even meals. Your body can only digest about 25 to 30 grams of protein at a time. So these huge protein loaded meals are not necessarily in our best interest. Excess, and I'll show a schematic of this, the excess protein can get stored as fat or glucose, glycogen, or it can be eliminated, but the excesses get stored as fat or glycogen can lead to fatty liver and obesity as well too. Estimates by Christopher Gardner, he's a wonderful nutrition researcher at Stanford in California, that if we cut back 25% of our current protein intake, we would still be getting enough. If you ever have a chance to look at his material online, it's fantastic. It's Christopher Gardner. Also, T. Colin Campbell pointed out in the China study that casein, which is protein in milk, actually is one of the most toxic to our body. And at levels of 20%, taking in protein at 20% animal-based protein can actually turn on cancer-promoting genes, where if you're under that, especially with plant-based foods, if you stay around 10 to 15%, you don't necessarily turn on those cancer-promoting genes. So it's a great book if anybody's interested in that. Lower protein animal intake and higher whole food protein intake is associated with lower rates of cancer. When just a slight 2 grams per kilogram a day of meat protein intake is increased with inflammatory bowel disease, such as Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. And there's an association with cardiovascular disease, but since I've put these slides together, it's really vascular disease, because we do not get arteries atherosclerosis that concentrates just in the vessels around the heart, but it can be in the brain, right? In any part of our body. And for men, especially like in the penile tissue, that's why they call it kind of the canary in the coal mine, because the vascular disease is an early sign of bigger problems. Diets are high in animal protein intake not only increase that LDL cholesterol throughout the body, but also drives the atherosclerosis and the plaque complexity, right? Which makes it a little bit more ominous. And then saturated fat intake, which is pretty high in animal products, is really a proxy for protein intake and our risk of cancer. So here's the schematic, and you can see on the left-hand side, when we take in dietary protein, it gets broken into its component amino acids. And then you can see as the nitrogen comes off, right, we have a portion that's stored as triglycerides, right, which will increase potentially fatty liver for us. The glucose gets stored to glycogen, and it can also go to our bloodstream. But then some of the amino acids will get reassembled into proteins for our cells. But the point of this slide is to show you that, a protein in doesn't necessarily equal a protein out, because there's other pathways here that can contribute to disease processes if we take something in excess. Next slide.
So we talked a little bit about getting too much protein and how that's a problem. So there's an increase in all-cause mortality in people aged 50 to 65 who consume a high protein diet of 20% or more calories from protein, and that increases all-cause mortality significantly, up to 74%. Now, this is if you're eating animal protein and having too much of that. Those associations were diminished or eliminated if the proteins were plant-based. So we're really talking about animal and processed animal proteins. That is a real problem. Numerous studies show a drop in overall mortality if 3% of calories from animal protein is replaced by plant protein. And that keeps going up. The mortality drop keeps going up more and more and more up to 10%, as you switch out 10%. If it's processed animal protein and you replace it with plant protein, that improves your mortality significantly more. So studies show an increase in heart disease, cancer, especially colorectal, gastric, breast, etc., and diabetes if you're eating more animal versus plant protein. Hence, you want to be careful on that. There's a great book called Plant-Powered Protein by Brenda Davis. Great information and also great recipes. So you may want to look at that too. Next slide.
So risk factors for protein deficiency. We do not have an issue of protein deficiency in this country, generally speaking. There are a couple of carve-outs for that, though. People that have had like a total colectomy or severe malabsorption syndromes, like celiac disease, Crohn's, intestinal damage, or a gastric bypass like a Roux-en-Y, which is a pretty dramatic gastric surgery. Starvation from low-income countries. Again, Dr. Scheuer had mentioned kwashiorkor. Severe burn victims, people with significant pancreatic damage. Intestinal parasites, again, you find that in low-income countries. Hyperemesis gravidum, which is a severe complication of pregnancy. The elderly, they typically have decreased taste, decreased appetite, so they take in less calories. Generally speaking, in our country, if you're getting enough calories in a variety of a varied diet, you're going to be getting enough protein. But if you're taking in very few calories, there's a risk of not getting enough protein. People who are on very limited, strict raw food diets or fruitarian diets can risk low protein intake, severe eating disorders like anorexia, and then diets that are based really exclusively on highly processed, ultra processed foods, junk foods, or people who live in food deserts that don't have access to a variety of foods, fresh foods, and most of the foods that they eat are highly processed. So signs of protein deficiency can be hair loss and hair color change, brittle hair and nails. The hair loss and brittle hair and nails can be similar to like hypothyroid, but it's very extreme in protein deficiency. Again, the swelling, the edema, because you don't have the protein for that, what they call oncotic pressure to keep the fluid in the vessels, muscle weakness and wasting, bone fractures, even stress fractures, failure to thrive, and lethargy.
And so lots of people ask about protein and amino acid supplements, because we talk about, how much for athletes, a lot of them talk about they need protein supplements, or as you're getting older and you're worried about sarcopenia. As long as you're getting enough calories and don't have an absorption issue or things like that, you can get enough protein without using supplements or amino acid supplements. And if you are using amino acid supplements or protein supplements, you have to be very careful of contamination, of what really is in the product. It's not regulated. So there is a website called the ODS. You can go to ods.od.nih.gov to find out what's going on in the products you're looking at. But there are many professional athletes who just eat more calories and don't supplement and do very well. And since they're professional athletes, it's not, it's an interesting thing. I actually checked my protein level on Chronometer, and I don't supplement. And I ended up getting 1.7 grams per kilogram per day without even trying. So do check. It's really important that you check. Same thing with amino acids. That's the letters, not the words or the sentences. Some people try to supplement certain amino acids, but what happens is you can actually block absorption of another one, and that can be a problem. So think about herpes simplex. There's an example of that. People tend to know that if they have herpes outbreaks, they take lysine. Why? Because herpes needs arginine to become active. And if you take lysine, it competes and blocks the arginine so that you have less of an outbreak or less amounts of outbreaks. So be careful if you're supplementing specific amino acids. And then you have branch chain amino acids like leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Those are important for building muscle, but only if you're doing activity. You can't just take them and not work out. You won't build muscle. You have to do the activity. So some power lifters and lifters will take that to help build the muscle. We prefer that you get it based on hemp, peas, pumpkin seeds, or soy. If you're even going to supplement, avoid whey protein. It's very not healthy for you, and a lot of people use that. But also remember what we said before. You want to take not a whole bunch at once because you're not going to absorb it. Take a little bit at a time. And there are some studies that show divided doses of 20 grams per day, divided up to 6 weeks, is considered safe. But that's only 6 weeks, and that's considered safe, so try and get it from your foods. Next slide. So questions: do plants have proteins? And do they have all 9 essential amino acids? Yes, 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 yes. If you ate only one plant, like corn, all day long, every day, you still would have all the 9 essential, but you wouldn't have enough of some. So it is important to get a variety of foods, of plant foods. So eat the rainbow, try and get 30 plant foods a week, and you'll be fine. You'll get all the 9 essential amino acids, and as many as you need of them. If you want one plant source, soy is a very good plant source of all 9 at once in a good level. Lentils, peanuts, peas, seeds, nuts, pseudograins like amaranth, buckwheat, quinoa, and wild rice are. And so remember Dr. O'Connor talked before about, not just having fruits or not just having some things, because you really want to get a bunch. And so 30 different kinds of plant foods a week would be ideal for so many reasons. Next slide.
So plant-based meat as an alternative, we want to watch out. You want to read labels. If you're not familiar with label reading, I spelled his name wrong. There's a typo here. It should be Jeff Novick. If you go to his website, he has a great video on how to read a nutrition label. Really, really key. A lot of these plant-based meat alternatives can be good for transition. However, they can be very high in fat, sugar, and salt. And the fat, especially, many can be made with coconut oil. That's nearly 90% saturated fat, which we know is going to raise our LDL cholesterol, which is going to increase atherosclerosis, can directly linked to heart disease. So you really want it. Coconut oil is not heart healthy. It's not in your best interest to consume it. Now, there is a carve out for that. If you are, an Ironman or Ironwoman triathlete and you're competing in these endurance sports and really ultra sports, some of the energy gels and drinks will have a little bit of coconut oil in there because they're medium chain triglycerides. That can actually serve a purpose, in those types of training. But generally speaking, for the rest of us, not a great idea. So just be really, really careful. They do contain fiber where animal products do not. They don't generate trimethylamine oxidase, which is linked with heart disease, or new 5-GC, which is linked with cancer. So it can be, they're a better alternative, and it can help with a transition, but I would not rely on them 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. There's a time and a place for transition, but just be really careful about how much of that you're eating. It also does use less water and land and produces less greenhouse gases, and there's less risk of foodborne illnesses. So they're equally good at building muscle, both animal and plant protein. But again, excess animal protein can be associated with kidney overload. If you look at the National Kidney Foundation, they actually do, for people with kidney disease, promote a whole food plant-based diet. So there's some really good information on their website there. Excess methionine in meat can promote cancer. And then the packaging for the protein matters. So if we look at plant protein, it comes with antioxidants, fiber, phytochemicals. If we look at animal proteins, it comes with cholesterol, endotoxins, heme iron, the new 5-GC, which is connected to cancer, saturated fat, choline, which can get converted to trimethylamine oxidase, which is linked with heart disease as well.
So, and our focus is always so much on protein, but we're missing out on other things like fiber. We are not a protein deficient country. We are a fiber deficient country, and we're deficient in many micronutrients and phytonutrients and antioxidants. So we don't go to the store to say, I need a protein. We go to buy whole foods. Get your whole foods and you'll be fine. Next slide. And fiber is so important. I know we're not talking about that, but if you look at this slide, you can see just increasing fiber 10 grams a day decreases cholesterol, heart disease, heart attack, strokes, et cetera, obesity, breast cancer, colon cancer, depression, other things. So please focus on whole foods, plant foods, which have fiber. Animal products don't. And because the plant foods have fiber and protein, you're getting what you need. Next slide. We're running out of time. So there's different kinds of fibers, soluble and insoluble. So again, just like we said, the rainbow of foods and a variety, make sure you're getting a variety, and you'll get plenty of soluble and insoluble fibers, which will help with all different kinds of things. Next slide.
So this slide is a little bit hard to see. I tried to keep it so there wasn't a ton of information on here, but this is really critical. You want to look at protein calorie per pound of food. And I know we're not always eating a pound of kale, but it's very easy to eat a pound of animal protein very quickly. So I wanted to compare and contrast and break it down the protein content per calorie. And so here, let's take a look at beef, a 20% lean beef, right? So we're looking at 1 pound. The protein is 77.8 grams, and the calories per gram is 0.068 grams of protein per calorie. So grams of protein per calorie. But let's look across the board here. What else has that, right? A pound of kale, right? Or broccoli actually has more than that. It's pretty easy to eat a pound of broccoli. And we even look at lentils, right? And peas. So you're getting just as much, if not more protein, looking at that spinach. It's fantastic. It's almost twice that. But now let's look at the total fat grams. It's 90.72 grams of fat. A third of that is saturated fat. And then this also has trans fats naturally in it. Trans fats are definitely linked to heart disease, so we want to avoid those. And all plant foods have fats in them, but they're much smaller proportion, right? It's what the plant needs to survive. So we'll get a little bit, but these levels are fine for us. And then let's look at salmon. Everyone's like, I have to have fish, omega-3s. You know, the fish get their omega-3s from the plants that they eat in the water. But we're looking at, again, 90.27 grams of protein in a pound of salmon. We know we can only digest about 25 to 30 grams of that at a time. There's 830 calories, and then there's 0.109 grams of protein per calorie. But again, we go across the board. Spinach has more. Lentils are right up there. Again, but look at the calories, right? Instead of 830, or in the case of beef, 1152, look at the calories here, right? We want to eat nutrient-rich, calorie-poor. The standard American diet is very nutrient-poor and calorie-rich. And again, the fat here, there's almost 50 grams of fat. 1/5 of that, 20%, is saturated fat. Does not have any trans fats, but you really need to consider the overall picture. So I hope that makes sense to some people. And then we can't go off the topic of protein without talking about climate and greenhouse gases. And I'm going to kind of go pretty fast through this. But it takes about 12,000 gallons of water to produce 10 pounds of animal protein. And one cow is about 440 pounds of beef. So that's 528,000 gallons of water per cow. And we already know there's parts of the United States where aquifers are drying up and have very limited access to water. Eating animal protein is like reverse protein generation because it takes about 12 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of beef. Why not just eat the grains? There's also increased nutrient waste, which is destroying our water, our air, and our atmosphere. And I will show you a photograph. We can go to the next slide. So this is an actual satellite image. This was taken about 2019. And the green is farms and the red is cities. But this is a nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium runoff that's going down and collecting into the Mississippi, all the tributaries, the Mississippi River, out to the Gulf of Mexico. And this is a dead zone here. So when people talk about eating fish, one of the questions I ask them is, where are you getting your fish from? Because this is a terrible area. The fish are concentrated with chemicals, not only with the farming chemicals, but also waste from industrial, the PFASs and PFOSs. So it's been estimated about 2018 that about 60% of the agricultural runoff in the United States all goes down the Mississippi River. So we are definitely destroying our own environment. Next slide.
So thank you so much for listening to us. I'm Dr. Kim Scheuer. This is Dr. Carrie O'Connor. We are with Love.Life Telehealth. Next slide. And I think we have docs in all 50 states plus DC. We can see people internationally. So please look at our great docs. We all live the lifestyle we suggest for our patients. And then we should get to, and here's some references just so you have access to these. Again, some great resources. Easy read is Brenda Davis's Plant Power Protein, but China Study and all these are great resources. Yay, Plant Power Protein. Let's go to some questions to make sure we answer some of these.
Awesome job, you guys. Bravo. That was fantastic. And even more impressive that you got all that in just over 30 minutes. So well done. Thank you for sharing that. I told you guys they were protein experts, so that was excellent. And we have a lot of good questions. So you guys covered some of them, which is awesome. So I'm just going to kind of go in order and read through them, and you guys can jump in and answer them. So Sheila, hi, so excited. 2 questions. I actually eat beans for all 3 meals, so not sure if almost 3 cups of beans a day would be too much.
I don't think so, because Dr. Greger in his daily dozen, you should get 3 servings of beans a day. So, and he has, if you look it up especially through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, they have a good one, which gives you the serving size. And it's like a half a cup of, it's like anywhere from a 1/4 cup to a half a cup, depending upon the bean and the legume that you're eating. So 3 servings a day is fine.
I think it's great too. And it depends on how much you're exercising, how much calories you're burning. So, and it's great for satiety, etc.
And it's certainly not harmful, but it would depend on whether you could digest 3 cups a day.
Right. So how's your gas?
You're okay with
also, one thing is important. Don't just do beans and forget everything else, the green leafy vegetables, the fruits, and, everything, and the nuts and seeds if you need to. It's really good to have a variety so you get all of the nutrients you need.
And so
calculate how much protein you're getting.
Excellent. And then she says, I have a salad with a tablespoon of flax, lettuce, veggies, half a potato. Would half a cup of beans be the right serving? Could I up it to 3/4 a serving, 3/4 cup?
I think if you're hungry, you can up it. If you don't need to, don't. Just listen to your body. Your body kind of tends to naturally know what it needs. And so if I'm really exercising hard and I feel like I need more, I eat more. If I feel like I need less, I don't measure this anymore. I just do it. So
great. Eddie says, hi from Virginia. Is there a preferable time of day to focus on protein intake?
It can create some satiety. So some people like to take it, a little bit later at night. But you want to have it equally distributed throughout the day, just because you cannot absorb all of that huge protein load at once. But Dr. Scheuer, you probably have more information on this.
So I think it depends on how you, I'm trying to remember exactly what this is, but some people say that if you eat a huge protein load at night, that doesn't work so well for sleep. Whereas you eat it in the morning, that'll help you, you'll use it more as you're using it during the day. And then some people like lower carbs at night. Some people, just see what works for you. I think everybody's kind of individual, and I agree. Don't power it all in one time. Put it different times a day so you can absorb it.
Yeah, as long as it's spread out throughout the day, as you guys pointed out, you'll get the right amount. And I would recommend playing with it, like Dr. Scheuer just said, because some people do notice if they eat more in the morning, they have more energy, it wakes them up, and have less at night, more carb-rich dinner, maybe your potatoes and vegetables, and then they sleep a little better. But other people might notice something different. So as long as you're dividing it kind of throughout the day, I would play with it and see if you individually notice a difference, because some people do say they do notice a difference.
And I notice a difference if you eat more during the morning and less at night. At least I sleep better. Mm-hmm. So I'll have a salad at night, a lighter meal, and way from when I sleep. And I'll do so much better because my body's not digesting so much. So try and eat breakfast eat more in the mornings or early lunch area, and then less at night, and you might sleep better too.
Excellent. So Vanessa says, can we get the slides afterwards? Yes. So the slides will be posted on our Love.Life Telehealth website. So you'll have access to all of these, and you can download them and watch them as many times as you want. Let's see. Carol says, what test measures protein? I think you mean like things like Chronometer and Fitbit. Do you guys, or MyFitnessPal, do you guys want?
I'm wondering if she means blood tests versus urine tests, like for nitrogen balance and things like that. So there is a way to test nitrogen balance to see how much nitrogen you're having in versus out. If you have a positive nitrogen balance, you're probably getting too much protein. But it's not an easy test to do. You don't want to do it. You have to be in a lab. It's very complicated. I do have patients who look at blood tests. There's some protein on chemistries and things like that people look at. But basically, really, unless you have one of the complications that Dr. O'Connor mentioned, and if you're getting plenty of calories of a diverse amount of foods, you really don't have a problem. And but if you're having some of the symptoms she mentioned, then talk to one of us and we can help you with that.
Excellent. We're running out of time, so we're going to take 2 more questions. You guys okay with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see, where were we? What about, there's a couple questions. If you're estrogen dominant and can't eat soy, is eating beans and lentils enough? So what are your thoughts on that?
Kim, Dr. Scheuer, I'll let you take this one.
Okay. This was if you can't eat soy, are lentils and beans enough?
Yes.
Yes. I would definitely, some people just can't handle soy. So yes, make sure you're having lentils, beans, a variety, some nuts and seeds. Remember that kale has protein. So as long as you're getting enough calories with some of those other foods, you're going to get a lot of proteins.
Excellent. We're rapid firing. Get these questions in. Good job, guys. Kim says, thoughts on protein needs and while in cancer treatment. Dr.
Here
Short?
Dr. Okay. So you will need more protein probably during cancer treatment. It's again one of those things where you're trying to rebuild your body. It depends on what kind of cancer treatments and things like that, but I would go more for 1.2 grams per kilogram up to a little higher. You want to make sure you're getting the calories in. So you may need to do smoothies to try, when you're dealing with the side effects of cancer, including abnormal taste, nausea, vomiting, all that stuff. That's where I would, put nut butters into a protein, into a smoothie to try and get as much in as you can at that time. Rarely you need some protein shake powders, and that's where I would use pea or pea rice or a mix of pea and rice proteins. You can check. There are ways to check whether you're getting enough leucine, all of the different amino acids, and we can finagle with that. But just it's getting the calories in and the healthy calories. You do not want the unhealthy calories because you want to make sure when you're undergoing chemo and radiation that you do everything you can to fight off DNA damage and get the hypernutrient yourself to get the nutrients you need to repair. I hope that
yeah, 30 eat the rainbow, like 30 different plant foods in a week. That's the goal, at least.
Excellent. Okay, one last question, you guys. These are awesome. Such good questions. I don't want to stop. Vanessa says, do you think a raw fruit diet with leafy greens will provide everything needed with some added beans?
I think you would be, I think you need to add a little bit more in terms of like grains, not only beans, but grains, fruits. You need a little bit more vegetables, not just the greens, but you can add some vegetables in there. And be careful because it is one of the things, like an extreme raw food diet can lead to protein deficiency states.
So make sure you're getting calories, check it on Chronometer. Make sure you're getting those, enough protein and amino acids on there.
Yeah, I would say exactly agree with you guys that I would recommend checking how much you're getting. If you do this for a short time, like as a little intervention, that's fine. But if you do it long term, you can be protein deficient. And I feel like I do see people protein deficient because people are trying these extreme diets for a long time, prolonged time. And so those are the people, and I myself have played with stuff back in the day, a long time ago, but you can be at risk if, we do these limited diets and trying to heal something, but over time, maybe we're not getting enough protein. So do pay attention. I think it's great to enter how much you are eating and just check it. And so for the long run, you want to have a well-balanced meal, including your protein, well-balanced diet. So yeah.
I think if your energy is good, if your strength is good, you're probably okay. But if you have questions, contact one of us.
Yeah,
and
we're
we can
happy
go
to
to
with you guys.
And remember, too much protein can lead to muscle wasting, right? So you want to exercise, and exercise is also good for bone health, right? So you need that resistance training. It's very, very important.
Yep. Excellent. Well, with that note, I'm going to wrap it up. You guys, these questions are so good. Thank you so much for coming, for joining, for being a part of it. Thank you to Dr. Scheuer and to Dr. O'Connor for putting together this amazing talk with all this wonderful information. It will be posted on the website so everyone can watch it as many times as you want. Please share it with others so that when there's confusion, the information is right here. It was excellent. So thank you, everyone. Do you guys have any lasting comments to share with us today? Words of wisdom.
Love each other.
Eat
Get plenty of sleep. Eat plants. Not too much.
Be kind to yourselves.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care. Bye.